That speaks, doesn't it? The past.
This video is going to be more personal than my video essays normally are, because The Dig is a film that means a lot to me, and I'm afraid you're going to have to let me indulge myself for once and my context behind it all. The Dig is a Netflix original film starring Ralph Fiennes and Carrey Mulligan about the true story of Sutton Hoo, which are a set of burial mounds that were dug up in Suffolk by a man called Basil Brown just before the outbreak of the Second World War, where they found the remains of a ship burial, possibly for a king from the 6th century, full of treasure. An incredible find that was an important part of proving the so-called dark ages of Britain weren't actually so dark, and that the Anglo-Saxons were people of great culture. It means a lot to me personally because I'm from Suffolk, and you might not tell that from my accent because I don't have much of a Suffolk accent. It seems to come up more when I talk to my family, and odd Suffolkisms seem to occur from time to time when I speak. A lot less when I sit down in front of a microphone. I don't know why. It's not a conscious thing, but I suppose it's not an accent that enunciates much at all. But it's not just, oh, this film is set near to where I live, it's about Sutton Hoo, where I've been, it stars a man with a Suffolk accent. It's the fact that Suffolk never gets any recognition in the UK. A lot of people don't seem to have heard of the county at all. Norfolk, which is the rival county, is a bit more well known, and most people have heard of Norwich, but even that's relatively unknown. I made a video last year about how refreshing it was to see the film Fighting With My Family, showcasing Norfolk and Norfolk locations. That was refreshing. However, we never get Suffolk, and much worse, never Suffolk accents. Whenever any film or TV attempts them, which is very rare, they're not Suffolk accents, they're just West Country ones. Same with Norfolk accents, which was my main criticism about the Fighting With My Family film. They gave these characters, who are from Norfolk, accents from a completely different part of the country, because for some reason that's what everybody does. Imagine a film set in Glasgow, but everybody spoke as though they were from Cardiff. Just imagine that. And Ralph Fiennes talked about it himself in interviews for this film, how Suffolk folk have always been done this disservice. One, not just of butchering their accents, but I don't know, not bothering to learn it, just doing a completely different one from the complete other side of England. I don't know why it keeps happening. Everybody knows what a Yorkshire or a Brummie or a Geordie accent is, or whatever other ones. And I realise I'm getting slightly annoyed now. I even went on YouTube and found this accents all around the UK video where she says about East Anglia.
I love to give you an example of somebody that comes from there that speaks like this, but they all lose this accent as soon as they can.
Which is true. I can't think of anybody famous with an East Anglian accent at all. I did this video, she is just speaking about East Anglia in general. She mentions Norfolk but not Suffolk as a place at all, and then doesn't even do the accent that well. Not that I blame her there. There's just not any TV or films you can actually watch to learn it from. Apart from this cool YouTube channel that's popped up in the last year actually. I just happened to find it searching before this. A whole playlist of somebody from Suffolk explaining the accent. I know it doesn't really matter at all. It doesn't even really bother me that much when I think about it. But, you know, why is Suffolk so traditionally ignored as a place and the accent treated like a thing to keep hidden from public knowledge? Even Ralph Fiennes, who is from Suffolk, doesn't even have a remote Suffolk accent and needed a dialect coach to teach him to speak like the place he is from. Does any of this matter to the actual video? Not really, I'm just indulging myself for once, although I think some of this might come back round to carry some meaning as we actually start talking about the film. But I just wanted to start by saying all this. We're not a boring, useless county to be ignored. Some famous people do come from here, and it's a very rural, very, very flat part of the country, for which I think it has the highest output of crop farming in the UK, I believe, which yep, makes for beautiful landscapes suited to John Constable and Thomas Gainsborough as painters. There's just farms everywhere, without much hills. For example, the closest thing we have to a decent football team, which is Ipswich Town, the once great home of Alf Ramsey and Bobby Robson, but now useless club thanks to a terrible, terrible owner. Their fans are nicknamed the Tractor Boys, which tells you everything you need to know about Suffolk. So anyway, Ralph Fiennes does a good job with the accent. I spent half the film waiting to see if it'd say "cut to hell" because it's the classic Suffolk phrase and it's what my granddad always says, and Ralph Fiennes said it twice, so that was enough to make me happy. But the actual film, it's not without faults, but I still absolutely loved this. Largely because it does something I don't think cinema does enough, which is give you a very slow, very understated film, which obviously isn't right for a lot of stories, but it is so integral to the themes of this. You know, we've got a true story of one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in the UK happening during the outbreak of World War II. There's also a romantic subplot between two other key characters and a pervading theme of mortality. You could have taken those elements and made a very dramatic film, and I think a bad director would have made this a very dramatic, possibly very sentimental film, but it isn't at all. Everything moves and feels exactly like the main character Basil Brown, who is a very quiet, very slow speaking, understated, often calm and introspective man. I mean, he's an incredible man, absolutely. A local boy who left school at 12 years of age, I think, and went on to learn everything he needed to know about excavation and archaeology despite no university degrees or anything. He learned a plethora of languages so he could read about excavations in Norway and other countries. He wrote books on astronomy, but at no point is this film going, look how great this man is, the way cinema often does with its protagonists. Instead, these are all things just sort of hinted at. And his emotional background too. There's a little scene where he's just talking with Edith and she asks him,
"Do you have children?"
No. We, No.
And that's all that ever gets said about it in this film, because Basil Brown is a classic Suffolk understated man who never wastes words and expresses only what needs to be expressed. Talking about the discovery of this incredible ancient ship burial, we get...
How very exciting.
Yeah, it's alright.
And in a moment of anger too, where their first find of the dig crumbles. There's no outrage or scream or anything beyond a quiet.
Last.
He spits and walks off alone to smoke his pipe and mutter to himself. That's it. And the grounded, understated approach of Basil Brown is the same lens through which we view the rest of the film, so that even this incredible excavation never loses touch with the ordinariness of life. And following the reveal of the ship, Basil Brown sits down by the river to smoke his pipe, and we see a ship passing by in a moment that almost feels mystical and powerful, as though this parallels what the Anglo-Saxons might have been sailing back in the 6th century. And it feels stirring in that way, but then the man aboard just says,
"Evening."
Evening.
and that's it. Why is this understated approach to everything so important though? Because it's not just that it reflects Basil as a person, it's that it connects us to what this film is really about. Time and death, the past, the fact we will all decay into history, because in spite of whatever glories, the world moves much like Basil does, slowly but steadily and calmly. Everything moves without much resistance. And these aren't themes the film really provides any great answers to, so much as just walks alongside for a while. Similar to how many of Basil's lines in this film, whilst often containing quite profound things, never fully express it at all, but just kind of hint at the depth.
That speaks, doesn't it? the past.
And I love this great scene with the child Robert, who, by the way, is a phenomenal actor for his age. He's the one character who really does have a scene that explodes with emotion, and he nails it the way many much older actors might not. Basil speaks to him here, and where cinema would normally give us a very long and moving speech, Basil's is very simple.
We all fail. Every day. There are some things we just can't succeed at. No matter how hard we try.
That's what I love most about this film. It doesn't try too hard to make great, profound statements or really reach at high art meaning, but just, like time itself, lets us walk alongside the events of the story. Just sit with the themes for a little bit, the sense of mortality and history and fleetingness, yet also comforting nature of time, that the idea of both an archaeological dig and the outbreak of war make perfect material for exploring, I think. We just kind of walk with the themes for 1 hour and 52 minutes and then, like time passing on, walk away from it again. We get this wonderful, wonderful credit scene to this film, which in many ways could be my favourite thing from it all, which is completely mad to say, but the film starts with scenes more commonly shot in the morning with the early sunrise and a sense of beginning, and then the end of the film has them shot more at night or as the day is coming to its end. And the fact is, this great dig that has uncovered all these incredible treasures, for all of that excitement, the Earth will still have to be put back again just as they found it. They'll have to fill the holes back in. And so after the events of everything and all the drama, the credits scene is just a quiet, uncut shot of Basil Brown, George Spooner and John Jacobs filling the ground back in again. And it's just deeply stirring in the context of the rest of the film. How events pass on, the day comes to its end, the dig is over. It's such a simple shot that doesn't sound at all good when I explain it like this, but is such a powerful ending to the film in the context of everything you watch leading up to it. And it's sad, but it's also not sad. It's not at all tragic, because it's just time passing in this slow and steady manner. It's strange how time can be comforting as well as a thing of grief, I think. Basil Brown is still here doing this job as we all do our jobs every day, slowly moving with the world, walking alongside it until we too come to our end. I expect without great conclusion or profound meaning that wraps a neat ribbon over our lives, so much as just acceptance of the end, which is what happens in this film. Time carries on past us. I think it's the understated simplicity with which the film lets us experience that is what makes it so moving. And then also, who better than a typical classic Suffolk man to explore that? A man who would have a very close tie to the land and to nature because he spent his life with a trowel in his hand, working with Suffolk soil. Classically, Suffolk is a very rural landscape and a county of farmers who would have been aware of the seasons and the passing of time in a way we kind of often ignore nowadays, or at least less aware of, because we're shut indoors without windows and lights always on, and that can make the modern world feel like time isn't really passing at all, or the opposite as well, I suppose, that the world's in such a big hurry nowadays that time might have sped up, but again it hasn't. It's all still the same very Basil Brown kind of slow, comforting pace. And I love this film for that too, how much it celebrates the Suffolk landscape, the flat expanse of it, the wide shots you get of skies without hills anywhere. It's a truly beautiful county, and it leads me towards saying something that will probably sound a bit ridiculous, but I've never been proud of being British. I don't care for the Queen or the flag or the national anthem because, I don't know, none of that means anything to me. I think patriotism can be such an illusory, deceptive, manufactured form of meaning we create. I can understand why others feel for it, I'm not criticising that, I just mean for me, it doesn't feel like deep-rooted culture in the same way your historical ties to the land does. The way people speak in certain accents in certain locations, where phrases have passed down sometimes for hundreds of years, because that's community still weaving a thread through generation after generation. And folk music of any culture always means something in that way and feels kind of stirring. And it feels like like time. It feels the way digging up these remains of Anglo-Saxons connects you to the earth again and reminds you what living is, because the past does speak. The Dark Ages, as they were always called, were not actually dark, but full of people with culture and languages and ties to the landscape, just like any other people from any other time period. How could humanity exist without culture? That's part of our connection, and the archaeological findings of Sutton Hoo proved it. So I don't know, I suppose I'm saying if I feel pride, depending on how you define the word pride, I guess, it's for my cultural ties to a long living community and to a landscape that's beautiful. Not just Suffolk there, but Britain in general I think is beautiful, and it's for that I love Dave's Walks, for letting me share his videos in the background of my rambles. They celebrate the natural beauty of Britain and just let you walk through it in the sort of way this film kind of lets you walk through it. So I don't feel pride in any kind of swelling of the chest, we're better than everything else sort of way, because I don't know, I think that's stupid. It's just pride in a sense that all these small pointless things, you know, the way British people begin most sentences saying sorry, or self-deprecate over everything, or talk endlessly about the weather. All these pointless things feel like home to me. They just feel like part of the culture I'm tied to, and that's what I know growing up. And when I hear Ray Fiennes say "cut to hell" or pronounce "over" as "over," or this one as "this'n," or tomorrow as "amora," I hear it and I just think, that's home. So I don't just love this film for giving Suffolk some recognition in a superficial sense of finally they're bothering to get the accent right, but because it intrinsically feels a bit like home. I love the dig for that alone, if nothing else. Although I do love it in general. And now for some more general thoughts, rather than me just talking personally about it. I do think the romantic subplot between Peggy and Rory is unnecessary in this film, and feels like some executive overseeing it went, shove some romance in, we need to please that demographic. That wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. And that is a bit unfair to say, because it's not a subplot that gets in the way of anything much, and we do get some poignant moments from it, such as an anecdote about nightingales, or Rory asking,
if 1,000 years were to pass in an instant, what would be left of us?
No parts of your watch. Torch.
With every last scrap of you and I would disappear.
And I also think they do the subplot with the same beautifully understated manner. It's well done, and there's a great scene in which Peggy talks without either of them explicitly mentioning the thing they're talking about, which is what makes this scene very nice. It's not forced. So the subplot isn't necessary, but it's well done and it doesn't damage anything. I think it's the scenes between Basil and his wife May that are the best scenes in this film, though. I'd love if they just filmed the two of them talking for an hour, because it's great. It reminds me of my grandparents, not just because it's Suffolk, but it's a total deep affection they have for one another without need for the flourishes of romance, and that just makes it so much more sweet than romance itself. They just kind of natter on and amble about together through their scenes.
Everyone's going to want a piece of this here ship, and this is your find.
Oh, my.
Don't let Ipswich Museum take your glory.
He's not going to take them.
All that lady of the manor, she should be up on your wages again. Have you asked?
Well, you're going to ask for more, mate. Well, she's very gracious, Mrs. Pretty.
I've been reading your books for company.
You haven't?
I have.
What the hell? It's not much company, is it?
No, they're hard work, I tell you.
They are.
And I like the kind of conflict of ordinary Suffolk men set against more posh kind of public schooled Britain in this film. I think it adds an important layer. I think the emotional heart of this film is actually probably the relationship between Edith's son Robert and Basil in the context of Edith and her life. You know, this excitable boy and calm, slow-speaking Basil who bonds, again, without any dramatic scenes that go, look how they've bonded now, but just sort of lets you enjoy the moments that crop up between them whilst time gives them that chance to bond. I really like the technique used in this film as well to splice the audio of one conversation over shots of slow montaged video from other moments in time. It's difficult to explain what I mean, so I'll just show a quick clip.
Your patience with Robert. He can hardly wait to come out and see you in the mornings.
Well, keeps me on my toes, having him around.
Do you have children?
This happens time and time again, and it can feel a bit jarring to get used to at first, but I think it's a good way to cement this theme and feel of time passing wonderfully, and how every interaction we ever have is precious because of how fleeting it is. It's just a really nice touch. I think the music's fine in this film. I think the cinematography is immense. The romantic subplot is invented, but I think the film is historically accurate in all the ways that matter, as far as I know. If you've got Netflix, The Dig is very, very much worth the watch. I loved it. If you don't have Netflix, I don't know. I bought my subscription basically to watch this, and I know I'm not going to keep it through the next month because 10 quid to be able to watch Netflix in a video quality higher than 480p is just too expensive in my opinion. I don't care how much I'd like to use Netflix, I'm not paying them that. Yeah, anyway, let me know what you guys think. Let me know if my Suffolk bias has blinded me. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to stick around. Support me on Patreon if you want even more. But otherwise, hopefully see you next time. And a special thank you goes to David Kling, Darren Burdaglatter, Kestrel, Gay Hitler, Biden Borg the Streak, Samara Salsi, Sharakov 2814 and Joshua C. Follier. Thank you.